especially for teachers. So, for instance, IT, for instance, the whole pedagogic changes with e-learning systems. Teachers are today doing long-distance courses for upgradation through portals, through teacher training, online programs. So I think this is another area which is emerging as for new challenges which have to be met. And again, I think the focus on making schools functional, on which the teacher is a very, very important part, so that learning outcomes improve, and more than anything else, the community and the parent are satisfied that my child is learning. So even the most illiterate parent expresses dissatisfaction because he has his own ways of assessing whether my child is really learning or not learning. So this is one of the reasons where anxiety should be with policymakers, with implementers, as to why schools, how to make schools more functional and more accountable to the parents and to the community. Another area which saw a lot of work was on community mobilization. And I think India's success story on enrollments and keeping children, retaining children in school would not have happened if it was not for the community faith. But again, I link it back to the fact that the community's aspirations are also changing. And today their expectations from the school are very different than what they were 30 years ago or 20 years ago. And if we don't meet those aspirational needs, there is these indicators where the boys are being pulled out and sent to private schools. So there is something for us to learn there. And even it's beginning to happen in urban areas for girls also. So there is something for us to re-strategize on meeting community aspirations. And finally, let me come to the issue which was flagged by Amarjeet, which is about how do you govern such system. India in the democratic world has the largest schooling system, the largest number of students, the largest number of teachers. And we are still going with governance models which were probably there when I started any of us started our career in the field in the IS. So have we slowed up on that? It's not as if we didn't know what to do. Many of the programs which Amarjeet has mentioned, these were nationwide programs. What systems did we make to be able to deliver those programs? You must have all heard of mission mode. So India was a great country for mission modes on various aspects, whether it was health, whether it was adult literacy, whether it was school education. We had a lot of seed, agriculture areas. What was so unique about these systems was, and that we were allowed to bring in new organizational models, fast-moving financial devolution. So as a result, if I speak to you about the education system, in all these programs which were run nationwide, we were able to set up what were called project offices. And these were project offices which drove the program, and we were able to get in each state some of the best leadership amongst the civil servants to be there, amongst the education department officials to be there, who could sensitively drive these programs and get them on the ground and monitor tightly, and also make rapid decisions and changes and innovations which were required to be done. Along with that was, and this was done by the government of India and by the state governments, was to have financial flows, very assured budgets which were released on time, and the travel of that money to the point of expenditure, at the point where it was needed and when it was needed, the time that it was required. So if you had to purchase textbooks before the school session opened, at least 4 months before that, the money should be with the district officer so that those textbooks could be procured and actually distributed amongst the children as soon as the session opened. So there were financial devolutions, powers were devolved to various levels, and so net there was a huge experience in decentralization. There was an equally strong current of planning at the district level. So it was the district which decided how many schools I want, where do I want those schools, how many teachers will I need, what is the volume of textbook procurement I have to do, so on and so forth. So whatever, or if the school needed whitewashing, or the school needed an additional classroom, these were reflected out of district planning, which was respected right up to the level of the central government, that this is what the requirement is. And so these are practices which I think were very valuable lessons for a governance model. And I don't know if they are, my feeling is that they have got a little diluted in the process. Our skill should have been, and skill still can be done, is to build these changes, or what were the vital parts of this model, into our normal pattern. Many states did. They did not run these programs in isolation, but they ran them as integrated education department initiatives. But when it came to finances, it has got bogged. So today it's taking a long time for central releases to reach an actual school, and it is tragic because today you have technology which actually technically the funds could be released straight to a school in any corner of India. So these are changes which I think governance models need today, and we need to continuously respect that for a large country, for a very decentralized approach is required for the local education improvement in many ways. And that decentralization, that devolution of power, that devolution of financial empowerment must be brought in if we are to sustain this and to carry it on to a full class 12 level. So these are some of the suggestions which I thought would be probably useful. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the system-wide movement over the last few decades in terms of where we were and where we are, some of the challenges and some of the achievements, the flavor of what was attempted over the last 30 years, some in mission mode, some through changes and reforms in the systems of management. You've just had an overview. I now request Anuradha Day to come up with the findings of the studies that she has been associated with, what the system looked like in 1996, in 2006, and subsequently. Over to you, Anuradha.
Thanks. Yes. I can be heard. I have a bit of a misfit in this panel because I haven't ever worked in the government. So, and I'm not also an educationist. I'm an economist who from 1995 onwards have been associated with education research, have been in the field. So whatever the understanding of schooling I have is through field-based studies. So I have been taught to look at what the parents and the students think about the system, what do they receive, how are they benefited. So it's a very different perspective from others. And as Amarjit said that we started with the probe survey where I, Amarjit, and there were several others from different spheres had come together to do the study. And since then we have made a research organization called CORD, a small one, but we have conducted field studies in multiple states, in elementary and secondary schools, and largely the Hindi-speaking ones, but also done in Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Maharashtra, and West Bengal. And I'm going to discuss only elementary school issues here. But one thing I wanted to make a point about is that before talking about learning outcomes, is that, see, India is very varied. Like every states, even districts, differ according to their agro-economic background, the population characteristics, their development levels. And education had been earlier a purely state subject and later come into concurrent list. So the education history is also different, the schooling history is also different. So for the policy, I feel a bit tensed about whenever something is, any intervention is successful in one state or in one area and people find it a robust change, they say let's main scale it and let's introduce in other states. But things are not so simple. If it were, then we would have solved it. It's really, really different. So that's something one should keep in mind. So just as Vrindaji was saying, like in the 90s when I first started being in the field, that was the time when National Education Policy 86 was formulated, the action plan was made in 1992 and was being implemented. And interestingly, whatever education research was done, they were not talking about learning levels as learning outcomes. They were talking about enrollment rate, repetition rate, dropout rate, transition rate. And there was a common term then called wastage, which is not used anymore, which is the number of student years spent by repeaters and dropouts. And I was feeling maybe we should use it for the, without learning the number of student years which are being wasted. So when we did the probe survey, obviously we didn't focus it on learning outcomes. We focused on these issues and what are their determinants were. So we looked at school management, school infrastructure, teachers, classroom processes, also home support systems, student attendance, child labor, schooling costs and incentives provided. We went to the, Amarjit has already said, is the major Hindi speaking states, the undivided Bihar and UP and Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, and as also Himachal Pradesh as a contrast to see why it's better. And things which Vrindaji also had pointed out, that we observed poor or no infrastructure, many schools had no building, teacher shortage and teacher absenteeism was a major issue. At the time, the para-teachers were appointed in some areas, the para-teachers were locally recruited, so that was useful in teacher attendance, but their education levels and training were much to be asked for. It wasn't up to the standard. Students were very irregular and there was blatant enrollment fudging. So enrollment and nominal enrollment, it was difficult to distinguish. Midday meals were yet to start. There were major problems in incentives, and our school visits show that class 1 was in particular given very low importance. They were usually made to sit with higher classes and often neglected. And so the data shows that dropouts were higher after class 1. And then by class 5, half the children enrolled in class 1 were already dropped out. And though we did not try to do any learning assessments, whenever we went to households, we tried to look at the children's copies and books. And we could see that a very limited homework and classwork were done and not usually checked. And in fact, our report, if any of you get hold of, we have a picture that we found a copy of a child which is full of small circles. And when we said that what does this mean, this is not in any alphabet, and the parents in surprise said, "वो लिख नहीं सकते," because the child thought he was writing and the parents thought he was writing. So that was the situation. And it was after that a survey started, and all the aided projects which were talked about, Lok Jumbesh and the DPEP and all, they also started assessment, and the very low learning levels were better understood. So when in the next decade we find many changes very similar to what Vrindaji had talked of. There were the EFA goals, the MDG goals, SSA was introduced. In fact, I think India's national goals were set before the international goals, that we needed all children in school initially up till class 5 and then up till class 8. So focus on school education was more. Budgetary allocation did increase in absolute terms, though as a proportion of GDP it did not much change. Center started playing a major role. Almost 25% of the budget was spent by the center, and state budgets were exhausted with the teacher salaries and maintenance expenditure and the central funds and the donor projects. They were very useful to cover the teaching aids, teacher recruitment, teacher training. VEC and PTA were trying to, policy was focusing on them to strengthen them, and there was a very high increase in number of schools, and with the number of schools increase and the high enrollment, there were need for teachers. But there were very limited pool of educated and trained teachers, and teacher posting in remote rural areas was a problem, major problem. So that was a time when we find that almost all states started using para teachers or voluntary teachers as a strategy. So there was a big change in teacher composition. So when we could check the impact of these policies when we did the probe revisited survey, where we found that infrastructure had improved considerably, but there were wide interstate and inter-district variations. So the variations came out then because one of the problem with our budgetary allocation is we always say 6% of budget karna hai, 6% of GDP, but the states differ in their SDP so much that Bihar ultimately spends quite a high proportion of their SDP on budget, but per student allocation is quite low. So even with that, they can't do much. Whereas, I mean, places like Chandigarh or Delhi or a high income state, a small portion can do much more. Enrollment was increased, gross enrollment rate surged, but there was a lot of overage children in primary classes, and PTR remained high. In Bihar and UP especially, it was very, very high. Not directly linked, but there was this emergence of low fees private school, particularly at primary level, low quality also often. And the different type of teachers we also saw, and teacher absenteeism and student absenteeism was still high, low teaching learning activities in classroom. And what we found, what didn't change in 1996 and 2006, both the cases we visited schools without announcing, and both the cases we found half the teachers not teaching. So that didn't change. This time we did try to assess learning levels, and they were very low, just like Asar said. What was interesting is Himachal Pradesh, though it was doing much better in other factors, its learning levels were similar, quite low. So learning levels are not easy to improve. It's a very difficult task. Since then, a lot of other changes have come in. One of the major changes I find with SSA and all is a focus on data and measurements. So there was this DICE data set, this massive DICE data set was there. So it was possible to identify spots where more needs to be required, what are the shortcomings. Then there has been this out of school children measuring, estimating that. There were regular household surveys as part of SSA. There were national surveys to estimate. And then measuring learning outcomes became a very important activity. States also started their state level activities, state level assessments. And I mean, I'm not going to repeat a lot because we did it in round table. Also that, you know, the unfortunate part is that the assessments haven't been used to inform the teaching process. Assessments is sort of saying, monitoring it, that people have learned, where it's doing better, who is doing better, but there's no feedback given. Education initiatives is one of the few who had tried it, and some states have used their inputs, but I'm not sure to what extent. But measuring learning levels do not increase learning outcomes by itself. So without these feedback system, one wouldn't expect much to happen. This was the time also we found very difficult to conduct school surveys because government earlier they allowed people to walk in and talk to teachers, but now it was stopped. It has its strengths, of course, but it was also difficult to get permission to go to schools. So we were involved in lot of impact assessment surveys. Lot of organizations, funding agencies, foundations, good NGOs, they were doing interventions in a set of districts or blocks, the schools there, to improve quality of education, learning outcomes being an important one. And there they usually did this before and after assessments to measure the changes. And they have focused on teacher training, improving classroom processes, with the expectation that the schools will have all the required infrastructure in place, all the support in place. But what we found in cases after cases that, I mean, states had agreed to the intervention because it didn't cost them, and maybe they thought something good might come out of it, but because of not having that support, no long-term impact was seen, and often it was a meaningless intervention. Like we had been to some schools in UP where it had one teacher or two teacher. Now there, how much you train the teacher or whatever you do, it can't have much of an impact. And very rarely did the states look at the results and if there was a good intervention to take it up at a state level. So I have been wondering that, and if you look at any state at that time, I don't know whether it is still now, that there will be at least 15 or 20 interventions going on in different parts of a state. Nobody tries to collect, nobody tries to see whether they are doing the same thing or not, and nothing comes out of it in the long term. So, I mean, is it a feasible way of raising learning outcomes, or whether something different should be done?
Thank you, Anuradha. I think between Brinda and Anuradha, we've got a sense and a feel of how the sector has moved over the last 30 years. Considering that Brinda has a flight to take a little later today, may I open these two presentations for a couple of questions now, and we'll move to the second half thereafter. And if it's all right with all the panelists, we are going on till 5:50. So 20 minutes extra we are taking at the end. Yes, please.
You can just
raise your hands, those who have questions.
All mics work.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, maybe I just.
Yeah.
So I work in rural areas of Rajasthan. I work there for
Dr. Pavitra Mohan is his name. Yeah.
And I work closely with public systems in the past, not so much with education systems, but more with health systems. And one of the things that Anuradha mentioned about the absenteeism being, same across 10 years. Similar studies in Rajasthan over 3 rounds from 2002 and then 15 initially by Esther and Abhijit and later by Ritika and repeated recently again, shows similar level of absenteeism. Infrastructure has improved tremendously, but absenteeism levels remain same, and that's what we see both across health and education sectors, that the accountability, the ability, people are there is corruption, there is absenteeism. How does one tackle that? I mean, because all of you have a huge kind of, and you, Mr. Swaroop, raised the issue of governance. To me, I think if the doctor or the nurse or the teacher is not there, whatever else you may do, you just require a motivated, strong, skilled person right there. And we have largely been unable to do that. We've done very well in many other fields, but ability to ensure that a public servant who's paid well, I mean, over the year, that is one thing that has changed hugely. Numbers have increased hugely. Doctors, now there is one doctor in every PHC of the country. I'm sure it's same with the teachers. Why is it that we are unable to make them work and stay in the place that they're supposed to?
We'll take 2-3 questions in one go. Yes, from there. Yeah. You start.
I think she has raised the hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so I come from Jammu and Kashmir. It may be relatively off the discussion, but I wanted to point out here, we're talking about learning outcomes. What I feel about learning outcomes is the essential aspect which I missed out during my school days is this mathematical and scientific aptitude. We might talk about these things that we have to increase learning aptitude, but my aspiration was to enter the IIT. The greatest brands of the country live in IITs and IIMs. However, I realized it very late that what I was missing out was on the mathematical and scientific aptitude. We are taught in schools, but the practical essence that maths carries with itself, or for the matter, the physics carries itself, which now I'm trying to make sense of, was not percolated back in the day. Basically, it happens in the backdrop of this thing that teachers, they are themselves not very well coordinated with the practice of science. I mean, they may be very well versed with the theory, but not well versed with the practice of science. So it gets down to me, and then it keeps on going. So there was this, I want to quickly give an example. There was this one school, which was operated by a professor from NIT. So he had these collaborations with different IITs. So he operated the school, and there were 3-4 IITians from that school. Because of this thing, that collaboration that he had forged with different IITs. So, do you think that, can we have a radical change in the government schools using PPP model? I consider that our government is not a capitalist government completely. We are not a capitalist country. But can we have a radical shift in this approach using PPP model? I could have, expand more about it, but please do not judge me on this PPP model. Yeah. Please take it on. Thank you.
Just one.
Yeah, good evening. So regarding the gender inclusion and participation of girls in education, we have schemes like Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya, which are only pertaining to EBBs, like economically backward blocks. Should we, educational backward blocks. So should we increase more of those to welcome girls, or is it the pertaining problems of social, economic issues like early marriage and all? And the second question is, ma'am, when we talk about teacher absenteeism, like sir has pointed out, is it about dereliction of duties, or is it about the management system that has to be restructured, where accountability or transparency has to be put in place? These are my two questions.
Yeah. Last one.
It's not exactly a question. So, ma'am has talked about absenteeism a lot, but then I was reading this paper by Karthik Muralidhar, and where he was actually saying that this is largely a misconception that government teachers are not turning out to the schools. Yeah, he's saying that teachers are largely in the schools. I don't know which one to follow.
Ma'am, responses from the two of you.
So would you like to go first? She's asked very specifically about your
No,
study.
so I'll take the absenteeism issue. One is, absenteeism didn't mean that the teacher wasn't working. I mean, for some reason, the meetings were kept in school time, or for the meetings they have to travel far. So they will leave school and go. Then they are entitled to certain leaves, and those leaves they are taking. It wasn't always that they were not doing their duty. It's just a not well-functioning system to ensure that teachers are in class and teaching. So that's what I felt, that much of it is there. What Karthik has seen, I think it's largely true across this large-scale absenteeism of teachers. I haven't seen so much in the recent years. And how to improve it, I'm not very sure, except some systemic issues. And about which states are doing better and why, like our studies, we did Himachal Pradesh and we didn't find they have any magic formula. It is the state's political will was there, and they did what they were supposed to do systematically. And for some reason, you will find even in very remote areas, teachers will go and teach. So it's become a norm. For parents also, sending children to school is a norm. For teachers also, teaching is a norm. So it's very difficult to, there are other lessons. I'm sure there are a lot of micro lessons, but it's too short a time to talk about.
So let me take your, what are the panaceas for teacher absenteeism? And I totally agree with you. And I wish we had done more about it when we were in, positions where this could have mattered. But today, technology is a great enabler. And I'll give you the example of Delhi government. At least, I think about 20 years ago, they had brought in IT systems for recording teacher attendance, which still works. And this is one state which has very good teacher attendance. So I think today's answer, if I was to draw a policy or a strategy for it, I would enable IT facilities. Some states have, actually. They have introduced attendance. But I think the other issue is that this is perhaps an aspect which requires a new norm setting, a new government system where teacher attendance is measured regularly and they are held accountable. And I would extend that accountability mechanisms even further to learning levels. By learning levels, I just don't mean outcomes, but that the teacher must teach, and it is her responsibility to get at least the majority of the children in her class up to a certain standard of performance. So I think this benchmarking is required, and there is no way that we should run away from this. But there are problems when you sit in government to try to do these things. They are very unionized. There are other issues which come up, but I think you have to bite the bullet at some stage. So I agree that reforms are required. On your question about science teaching and mathematics, much of these reform cycles of pedagogy and training and capacity building, and even now we are struggling with that even in elementary level to get good numeracy, and it's a question of learning outcomes and learnings actually happening to be able to, for children to be able to take this learning further in higher classes. But I don't think we've done sufficient work yet on the secondary schooling sector. And that's the critical level for building up a robust science and a mathematical temper. That work is still going on, but I think these are still reforms which are, there's a lot of innovation today happening in this sector, but we have to make it pervasive as has happened for the elementary school sector. On your question about girls, you see, the Kasturba Gandhi program was a residential program introduced to help girls who had left schooling, and then to bring them into class 6 in a residential environment, build up their learning levels so that they could complete their class 10. And some states have extended it to class 12 also. But this was for that catchment of those who had missed formal schooling. But now and it was never meant to be a permanent thing. So the expectation was that once the regular school system is up and functioning around their homes, then they should actually be going for day school. So I don't think there's a permanency involved. I wouldn't encourage its replication even. But yes, you're also right that there are still cases where girls need to come in there for their catching up programs to do pass their class 10. But I think this ultimately it should phase out in my view.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Friends, we'll come to your questions again. We'll now go to the remaining panelists. I'll first request Sanjay Kaul, sir, to share his thoughts.
I like this crutch, sir.
On the, yeah. We'll take questions again at the end.
Before Vinda leaves, civil servants have been quite charitable in this journey. And since I quit the service early, I want to start with a critique of what happened in this journey, and which has had very major consequences, some of which Amarjit talked about, of inequality. So this business of universal primary education was something which has had serious consequences to the human development in the country. Because what happened? You had poor quality of schooling, you had 4 or 5 years of schooling, and by the time that child, even if she went through 5 years of schooling, became an adult, had actually relapsed into illiteracy. So this investment did not contribute to well-being or any really improving the productive capacity of that household. And I think this unfinished business which Brinda and you talked about of the secondary school. So in the 80s, China had a 9-year compulsory schooling. And here we are progressing from 5 years, 4, in fact, in Karnataka it was 4 years only. And upper primary was 7 years. So at the age of 11, 12, you are dropouts. Unfortunately, there is unfinished business because if you look at the net attendance rate of secondary schools, it's still in the early 60s. And in some states it's as low as 50. Now what this has, the consequence of is that poorer households are the ones who are dropping out. It's not that randomly children are dropping out. So you have exacerbated inequities, and now you have a situation where the majority of poor households are accessing government schools. Now these are new literates because of that consequential impact of not having invested in secondary education right from the beginning. Now, question of financial provisioning is a different thing, but I'm talking of education policy where you talked of universal primary education, universal UE then, and then you talked of a secondary education commission, the beginnings of it in 2000. So the first 45 years of independence, you've talked of 5 years of schooling, which to my mind, as a development economist, made no sense. Now, given this consequence, there are two other huge gaps that have arisen. One, if you're dealing with a child who's coming from a new literate, impoverished household, what kind of learning outcomes do you expect from that child? There is evidence to show that a lot of learning takes place at home. And if you cannot substitute that learning environment at home after school, then whatever you do in those 5 hours is going to be a compromise. So therefore, comparing education systems in India with what is happening in Finland or what is happening in advanced states or private schools where you have children coming from better off households is not a fair comparison. So you do, and there are experiments that remedial teaching of children of poor households has proven to be very effective. Seva Mandir has done it in Rajasthan, and it's the same government school teacher which has bridged gaps, but we have not talked about in the education policy that there is a huge problem when you are dealing with children from poor households. They are not on par with children who access private schools, not only because of the quality of the schools, but because of the quality of the learning home environment. There's another major gap which we've not been able to address, and that is, and my passion is for the young child, is the 0 to 3. Now, brain development is almost completed by the time child is 3 years old. Now again, if you do not have stimulation of any kind in the household, in a poor household, where the parents are struggling for survival, and you don't have any system, because the ICDS is basically the physical participation is post 3. And we all know the huge challenges of preschool or ECC in Anganwadis. Now, what is that? The unfinished business. Now, there is a dilemma here. Do you now start all from scratch and say that we now open primary schools? I checked the data in Karnataka. We have 826 preschools against 42,000 primary schools. It will take us 50 years to try to develop preschools. Now, you have to work with Anganwadis. Give them a teacher extra, give them support, give them capacity building, give them materials. So this is the unfinished business, and unless you tackle this concept of 0 to 3, maybe through daycare services, which you talked about, through ECC, and you talk about some remedial support to children of households, learning outcomes will never be comparable to what you can get in a school where children are coming from educated households. Now that brings me to the last set of issues, and which is one set of issues in the governance which Brinda talked about, and is that we have divorced management or governance management with academic management. And education policy, and I am a culprit, has been of the view that if you supply textbooks, you supply a good curriculum, you supply teachers, and you educate them, educated teachers, then the rest would take care of itself. The issue of learning has come into the education landscape very late in the day, where you're talking about learning outcomes of, well, we did have talks about minimum levels of learning even earlier, but not really focus on now, if you look at the education management in states, what do you find? You have something called an education inspector who not only is corrupt, but he spends 99% of his time on supply chain management, ensuring that rations are supplied on time, textbooks are supplied on time, uniforms are supplied on time, their education monitoring, report monitoring, and of course, non-academic kind of things. So if the subject inspector is not doing academic supervision, who is? There is nobody who is providing. So you were talking of accountability of teachers, but where is the guidance, where is the counseling on a regular basis to teachers to even assess? So you have private schools where you have a senior teacher doing classroom observation. Who is doing that here? So so BRCs, CRCs was a great effort where at least you got teachers together, but it really has not sustained itself over the period of time. And I think that's something, because you can't have diets with something like 1,000 teachers being able to, the logistics doesn't work out. So you do require decentralized local level resource centers. And this is the unfinished business. So the secondary schooling is something which I think is something which is paramount. If you do not talk of compulsory 10 years of schooling, at least, if not 12 years, I'm telling you, this inequity in society and this rich-poor divide, because education could have been a leveler. And if we had just done that and nothing else, we would not have seen the levels of impoverishment and lack of well-being that we are seeing today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those very well-made points. And I take this opportunity to thank Vrinda Sarup, ma'am. She has a flight to take. We've kept you busy, but I tell your presence has really made a difference. Thank you so much for the round table and this. Yeah, bye. May I now invite Reddy Subramaniam, again one of our stalwarts who's worked both in rural development and in education. He will be speaking about integration of skills and higher education.
So, friends, attending this sort of a panel really helps because, you just got to learn and not sitting here moderating the session. The National Skill Qualification Framework has come during his time when he was Additional Secretary in the higher education. And I was, I went to a warm seat where he sat. So they said that yes, it is possible to develop a 3-year skill-based apprenticeship embedded course. Then we said, karke dikhao. So 4 sector skill councils have come forward: apparel, healthcare, tourism, and logistics. They have developed courses which are where students can actually 3+3. 3 दिन class में बैठेंगे, 3 दिन shop floor में बैठेंगे, and then they will learn everything. They will learn accountancy, they will learn inventory management, they'll shop upkeep, how do you handle the customer, सब कुछ सीख लेंगे. A little bit of IT. Then we said करके दिखाओ. So we started this in 2018-19 in one college called Loyola College in Vijayawada. Some of you may be from that college. So they introduced. पहले people said that क्या इसका क्या नाम है, इसका क्या मतलब निकलेगा इसका, what will come out of this. So some people joined reluctantly, but when the first batch got 100% placed at 50,000 a month, 40,000 to 50,000 a month, then there is a big demand. So the college has raised the fee. So college has benefited, they raise the fee. Student is willing to pay, he is willing to take a loan and then come and study because he is going to get a job. The sector skill council said that हमारे लिए लोग मिल रहा है, qualified persons 3 साल पढ़ के आए, not ordinary नहीं है, 3 years they have studied and come out. So when they enter with a complete knowledge of the industry. Okay, so they can start at a supervisor or junior manager level. So when this has happened in Andhra 2018, then we tried to look at it, replication. It has happened. The replication has happened in somewhat major way. Those of you who are from Telangana can actually see this happening. I mean, there are colleges like City College, the City College. I wish Amarjit gives a little bit more time, and we can actually see the transformation. I have seen the transformation happening in front of my eyes. People from the slums of gold city of Hyderabad, people who have no hope in life, have joined this course, and then you just find them speaking today. I had a goose pimples in my all over me because so much of confidence. They are able to say that. Then I asked them, where do you learn most? So there is a new hope, and they're so happy, bright. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a hope for transformation of the higher education by integrating skills into the so-called general education courses, which is taken as granted that is a wastage. So my only point I want to make here, and I stop there, is that we must do it now. Because you don't have time. You wait for another 5 years, you lose this golden opportunity that is given to you, and then if you wait longer, you will actually, you will just see to reap a lot many more sordid stories, and they will be for long time. So friends, I wanted to say that there is hope, and then we must act together. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Subbu. Yeah, any 1 or 2 comments, questions? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Let's begin with those who have not spoken so far. Madam, you. Thereafter, yeah.
Thank you. It's very encouraging what you said. Actually, looking forward, maybe ahead as well, and asking how prepared are we to new technology like AI coming in?
Okay.
So what's going to be our way forward?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'll just share a quick comment, very inspiring. Like, we started Eklavya, which was a school and teacher training college in 95, 96.
Yeah.
Before that, we were planning to do something in engineering. So we visited Germany and saw these apprenticeship schools. And finally, we said that we must do the same thing in education. So in our teacher training course, all the trainees went 3 days school, 3 days. In fact, we did alternate day in this thing. And after 3 years, we basically had to stop the program because like they had to take the state exam, they had to write MLLs 8.2.3, didn't make sense. But all those students who did those 3 years are today principals or leading people everywhere. So I think this is a great idea. And even in companies, like today I run an edtech company, I think and it's in Bangalore, so Bangalore and Gujarat. So if in case colleges can do this 3 days, I also completely agree that this can make a huge difference, and we can observe maybe a small number, maybe 30, 40. But I think it's a great idea, and it's great to know about that.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
I have a observation that aren't we too much focusing on education system for creating employment and to, make economy stronger, and we are forcing individuals towards making money. The purpose of life has become to make money. Just because of the education system, we are pushing towards employment and enhancing the economy. Rather, we need to rethink the education system altogether for a purpose of life.
Sir, so we don't know the NAS surveys outcomes. So Telangana is in the top bottom 3. We don't know why. And each year Acer has a different parameter, and then yeah.
Why Telangana is low?
No, not why
yeah.
Telangana. Not why
okay.
Telangana.
Yeah, what?
We don't know the reasons why it is in the
Okay.
bottom 3. And each year Acer does the survey on different parameters, different age groups. So what I'm asking is, what is the best survey to understand the outcomes?
Okay.
And then one more question, I'm sorry. And then how does NEP fare on outcomes? What does it say? How is it faring? Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Like we can see everything is changing rapidly in
Yeah.
this AI world. Like I was watching a documentary. It was from Jammu, and a 12 years old girl was watching all these YouTube shorts and Instagram short form contents. Like they are spending almost 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. So we are having newer problems like forgetfulness, short term memory. That's actually that's an emerging problem. Are we ready to face that problem? Are we going to plan any interventions? Actually, we have to take this right now. I
The
guess.
last comment, yeah.
I'm all of his the things that he mentioned,
Yes.
the skill-oriented courses and all.
Yeah.
But I think we should take it with a pinch of salt. We shouldn't patronize it too much, because I think we are in a times where we started actually appreciating a liberal education from the times where these liberal arts are like being looked down upon. Right now we have DU, Ashoka, they are all doing great in liberal arts.
Yeah.
And if you start patronizing too much, I think that would go on.
Okay.
lost.
I think we have been given time till 17:50. So 2 minutes I'll just use to sum up. Friends, it's been a very, very rich discussion. Very little needs to be commented upon what has been said. But clearly from this whole discussion, I could zero in on about 15 different points. Just in one-liners, I'll place it before you. There was a broad consensus that school infrastructure has improved over these last 3 decades, by and large, which is a good starting point. In the sense, if the school infrastructure is in place, as some people call the SSA, not Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, a supply-side Abhiyan. Supply is everything that school needs. So I think you have a starting point. Not many possibilities are there using that space. Learning outcomes have been unsatisfactory. COVID has affected them even more. We have 3 studies, the ASAR study, the National Achievement Study, and the World Bank Study 2021-22, which all confirm a decline in the absolute values of scores subsequent to COVID. So there is evidence to that effect that there was a decline. Governance of the school system has been dysfunctional. Many of the points which have been made from this side have brought out the great challenges on governance, financing reforms, because unless and until those are put in place, those at the school level who actually implement the manner in which the thought process at that level is not autonomous. Schools don't have as much autonomy as they ought to have. I am reminded of a study which the registrar of the Azim Premji University, Giridhar, did on school teachers. And what he had identified came up today as well in the course of the Punjab discussion before this, is about leadership. By and large, any successful school has a leader. It can be a community leader, a panchayat leader, a teacher, an ex-serviceman, somebody there but somebody in that village, and there is high social capital in that village. People want a good education. So leadership, he has studied about 100 schools across the country as part of that book. Some of you may like to see A. Giridhar's book on role model school teachers. The fifth point about possibilities of blended learning. The physical infrastructure is there. The average teacher is not so outstanding, but even if a diligent teacher who goes regularly and who is able to handle e-learning material which children can use, or can introduce a television screen with blended material available for all children, if you address the equity bit, blended learning may have a possibility. Even an average diligent teacher can get you better learning outcomes if we are able to do. There are materials to that effect now. The next point about decentralized management of schools. Now, a lot of people have raised this issue. The dysfunctionality of governance has to do with the lack of decentralization. If we were to look at the evidence in India, if Kerala schools have done well, among other factors, decentralization has mattered. Many other states where school systems have performed better than other states, one of the factors, besides the teacher community, is the issue of decentralization and school autonomy. It did make a difference. The weeding out the non-performers. This point came out repeatedly about teachers. Non-performing teachers also continue in the system. There are state recruitment rules which provide for such provisions. Bihar is one example, which provides for teachers recruited through the process, not performing and not clearing a set of exams. Government is within its rights to remove them. We've had these processes before, but the political system even today is quite happy to continue with that fellow. When it comes to that crunch of throwing that fellow out, somebody will step in on their behalf. The political elite is still, the school is important. Well, in some states it was important as a polling booth. Where you located the school was where the polling booth was. Now that character has not translated into politicians winning elections because of good schools and good learning. That trend has started setting in. So I'll come to that issue as well. The non-academic load of teachers. This also came out in the discussions a little bit. He is the booth level officer for the Election Commission of India. From getting election cards made to calling the voters to the booth, all kinds of jobs they have to do. The midday meal, except Tamil Nadu, everywhere else, the teachers have some role. Why can we not have, like Tamil Nadu, the self-help groups and others? Tamil Nadu has the Social Welfare Directorate. The teachers in Tamil Nadu refused to run the midday meal scheme when it was started. So clearly time has come to look at the non-academic load of teachers as well, because that seems to be interfering. Teacher recruitment and teacher development, the jury is still out. Which is the best way to recruit a good teacher? Non-threatening assessment of learning. A point which is often made, government schools, you don't test the child, therefore the child doesn't learn enough. I was very happy to read about Vietnam children doing very well. And I was hoping that I'll find something which is very fascinating. All I found was test, and more test. Both Vietnam and Japan schools do well, not because they have new pedagogy, but they keep testing all the time. Now, I'm not advocating that, because clearly, but there is a challenge of non-threatening assessment of learning. I think the point about societal mission, good schools should matter in politics. It has in some states, some political parties have been raising the issue of good schools and good hospitals and good health facilities. Unless and until it becomes a priority there, not only setting up of a school, but actually having better learning outcomes in schools. And I completely share Subramaniam's concern that demographic dividend is actually becoming a demographic debacle if we don't invest in the human capital. The time is now. We have already lost time. We will become old before we become rich. And that is a dilemma that can only be addressed through the reforms that we've mentioned about. A point that has not come up in the discussion, but I'd still like to flag, why do residential schools do better than others? Navodaya Vidyalaya, Andhra Pradesh residential schools for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe children. It clearly brings out that the home factors that you face in a real life situation is not very conducive to learning outcomes that you're looking for. Even a Kasturba Gandhi Vidyalaya, a residential school for girls, it's a very strong demand, isko 12th tak chalaiye. Raise it to class 12th. Because adolescent girls would like to study in a residential school. Besides being safe, proper nutrition, proper food, all those issues do matter. The last point on skills, what Subbu mentioned, yes, by all means, the earlier experiments, unfortunately, have been piecemeal. BA, BSc courses in universities, St. Xavier's College, Bombay, Ruia College, Bombay, for the last 10, 15 years, if you do a BA pass course, they'll offer you a certificate program on tourist guide, a certificate program on a counselor for children, certificate program for something else. Many universities were doing this small little course where you do a degree or you do a BA pass or general course, but you also in your third year opt for this. Clearly, what Subbu has argued for is a longer 3-year thing. The other bit, which again, unfortunately did not succeed to that extent, the community colleges which were opened in many of these schools were expected to run in these colleges, to run courses of this kind. Then we have had the experience of the bachelor's in vocational studies. Now, I think the point that Subbu is making about mainstreaming with BA, BSc, BCom courses effectively over a 3-year period so that the student graduates with skills and knowledge both. And that's what Germany has been able to do successfully. Vocational and skills never work as a standalone system. China had vocational schools and regular schools. It closed all their vocational schools because those who were treated inferior in learning were all dumped in the vocational school. So clearly the model that he's suggesting, there is a need to act fast and quickly on that. I think this is broadly the set of issues. We can go on and on. But thank you very much for your comments, remarks, suggestions that you've made. Many of those will require more attention over the next 2 days. Over coffee, tea, we will meet and answer your queries. And thank you for so many queries. If more people are interested in education, some change will happen. Thanks.
I would like to extend a sincere gratitude to all the panelists for sharing their insightful and thought-provoking views on the vital sub-theme, improving learning outcomes in schools. We truly appreciate the expertise that you all brought to the discussion, fostering a collaborative environment that inspires a positive change in the domain of school education. I would like to request Mr. Amarjeet Sinha to kindly felicitate the panelists, please. Mr. Subramaniam R. Mr. Sanjay Kaul.
Thank you so much, sir, for making it and your very, very valid points.
Miss Anuradha Day.
Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you so much.
May I please request you all to stand for a group picture? Request you all to please take On time.
Thank you. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we move on to the last segment of our deliberations for the day. It is my pleasure to introduce the upcoming panel discussion, which centers around the intriguing topic of human development perspectives from states. The lens through which we perceive and assess human development is multifaceted, encompassing not only economic indicators, but also social, educational, and environmental dimensions. Each state in our diverse nation presents unique opportunities, challenges, and strategies for fostering human development. Our esteemed panelists, with their vast administrative experience, have played pivotal roles in shaping the destinies of different regions. Their insights and perspectives promise to unravel the complexities involved in navigating the path to inclusive and sustainable human development. So before announcing the next panel, we'll just wait for a minute. Okay, so now please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. Ms. N. Vijay Lakshmi, IAS Principal Secretary, Department of Animal and Fisheries, Government of Bihar. Please give a huge round of applause. Please welcome Ms. Rakhi Bhandari, IAS Principal Secretary, Parliamentary Affairs, Tourism and Cultural Affairs, Government of Punjab. Please give a huge round of applause. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the moderator of the discussion, Dr. Arushi Jain, Policy Director, Bharti Institute of Public Policy, Indian School of Business. We also have Mr. Sampat Kumar, who will be sharing his viewpoints and representing Government of Meghalaya. He will join us shortly. Can we please have the mics adjusted to him?
You should come here. Yours.
Over to you, Dr. Jain.
Thank you, Nimisha. I just wanted to wait for Mr. Sampat Kumar. He was entering from the gate when we called up. He thought there might be a break in between. That's what no, she's not coming. So I know this is the last session of the day, a tiring long day for everyone. I know, a little tough, but I think this is a very, very important perspective that we will be discussing during this session. A small disclaimer, one of the panelists who had to be here for this discussion couldn't join in because of the delay of flight. The flight is reaching at 7:30 instead of the planned time of 5 o'clock. So we couldn't help it, and I am here to moderate this session, and we just changed a bit of that plan. The best part here is that we have 3 panelists with us, each of them bringing in a perspective from a different state, and all of them having worked either in Government of India or having studied in different programs, being a lot academically inclined. They bring in very, very diverse flavors and perspectives. So I will request them not just to focus on what they are doing in their particular state, but also from their experiences of their working in the Government of India in different departments. So we have with us, as you all know, we have with us Dr. N. Vijayalakshmi. Dr. Vijayalakshmi is a Principal Secretary in the Government of Bihar. And just before this, she was Joint Secretary Agriculture in the Government of India. Vijaya has been instrumental, and a lot of work that she has done has been around the farmer-producer organization, markets, and market-related reforms in agriculture. Apart from, please, Mr. Sampath Kumar is here. Very warm welcome, Mr. Kumar. We also have with us Ms. Rakhi Bhandari. Ms. Rakhi Bhandari is an IS officer of the Punjab cadre. Currently, she is holding the portfolios of the Department of Parliamentary Affairs, Tourism and Culture, but with 25 years of experience, I am sure, having dealt with various positions, right from the cutting edge levels of the Deputy Commissioner to having, been at different departments at different levels, there are experiences that she will bring in to this discussion. We have with us a very dynamic officer from the Northeast, Mr. Sampath Kumar. Mr. Sampath Kumar is the Principal Secretary and Developmental Commissioner of the Government of Meghalaya. He is leading something that is very, very interesting called as the Government Innovation Lab, and looking at state capability enhancement in a very big way. So it's a pleasure to have 3 of these very dynamic officers with us for this discussion on human development. So as I begin with the topic, human development perspectives from states is a very, very diverse and a multifaceted view in a country like India, wherein the country is vast, is very culturally rich, but also there are significant variations. These variations are in terms of the socio-economic progress. These variations are cultural in nature. These variations have a lot to do with the history of those particular states or regions. Apart from the economic development, if we discuss on aspects of human development, if I take up aspects like education and health, and we were just listening to the panel on education just before this, the southern Indian states actually led the way towards learning outcome goals and improvement in quality of education. And there have been states in the northern part of the country who have been following but have been really doing very well in the recent times, and one of their states is Punjab. Similarly, if we talk about health, the southern Indian states, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, showed the way to the country, but there are states that are now doing extremely well or are putting a lot of effort in the health sector, and Meghalaya being one of those examples. If I look at gender equality, there are states like Himachal, Kerala leading the path, but there are others that are again trying to emulate, trying to learn, trying to experiment and innovate, looking at that development on the gender perspective. Social welfare programs, there are states like Telangana, Odisha, who innovated to a certain extent And there have been best practices being documented in these states, and some other states are also now looking at whether these best practices are scalable or not. Environmental factors, political commitment, political governance, all of this becomes very important while we talk about human development from a state perspective. So with this brief introduction, I'm going to now come to our panelists and pose a few questions, and will request them to give their insights, just like a panel discussion. We are not going to the podium. We'll keep it more like a free-flowing discussion, and we will like you to pitch in wherever you feel like. So the very first question, and I'll begin with Vijaya, is that, Vijaya, how do you, because Bihar has had a lot of, we've seen those challenges of human development in the state of Bihar. There were times in between when things were looking very, very promising. There are initiatives that are happening in the state, but if I talk about Bihar in particular, how do you define human development in Bihar? What have been your experiences, and what should be the focus going ahead?
Thank you, Arushi. Bihar, in terms of what you have said till now, is somewhere in the middle, and of course it has had a lot of problems in terms of history, in terms of the kind of policies before independence and post independence. So given that backdrop, Bihar is now a very, very, very promising state. So a lot of initiatives have been taken up by the government in terms of creating an enabling environment for women empowerment, especially. If you actually see the human development indicators, you see that Bihar is improving when compared to NFHS. If you see the successive NFHS data in the latest NFHS 5 survey, there are a lot of improvements. But still, I would like to say that it is work in progress. Of course, there are a lot of historical reasons. I may, in the process of discussion, if time permits, I will go into those details. But those are very interesting details. One should actually know why Bihar is like the way it is today. But going forward, a lot of initiatives in terms of providing 50% reservations in the Panchayati Raj institutions. Bihar is one of the first states to provide 50% reservation for women in the Panchayati Raj institutions. So that has actually created a huge difference, the way women have come forward, take up those positions, be able to speak in between men, and take up the leadership positions. Earlier, if you see women, especially the panchayati, in the panchayats, whether it is a ward member or a mukhya, in the ghungat and all that, ghungat pehen ke hi rehte hain mahilayein aaj bhi. So coming out of the ghungat and then be able to stand there and as a mukhya lead that panchayat and make her viewpoint, that itself is a huge transformative change which Bihar has made. So I'm very glad to tell you all that now you see a lot of women mukhyas in the Panchayat Raj institutions. The other very, very visible initiative, very, very visible change which you see today in Bihar is a lot of women in the uniforms. Because the government has provided 35% reservations in the jobs of constables and ASIs. So you see a lot of women in the uniforms. So that's a huge, huge change for a feudal state like Bihar. So women, you see everywhere women, in the police gasti and everywhere, in all the, even in the thanas and all. So you have actually a lot of other issues, how to provide sanitation facilities, toilets, and you should have separate those police lines, separate barracks for women and all this. So we are actually facing other kind of issues which were not there earlier. So that's a huge development. And another very promising and very successful initiative in Bihar is organizing women into self-help groups. And Jivika, which is known as Jivika, under the National Rural Livelihood Mission, this was started in 2007, way back in 2007, and it is a huge platform where women are actually doing wonders. There are, of course, now it's a huge thing. There are 12 verticals developed, and the SHGs are working under those 12 verticals, reaching out to 1.3 crore households. So that is the kind of, more than 10 lakh women self-help groups have been organized, and like so many, village organizations, almost 83,000 village organizations. It's a federated structure, 3-tier structure, and you also have cluster level federations, more than like 2,000 and all. So all of them are doing many innovative things, both in the farm sector and non-farm sector.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vijaya, for that insight on Bihar. From Bihar, we are going to the northeastern state of Meghalaya. And Mr. Kumar, I was just saying, we'll begin with the states where you are coming from, but you can share your experiences from other states, from the learnings that you have from your academic bent of mind, and that's what we spoke before you came in. So please feel free to just give examples from wherever you want. But coming to Meghalaya in particular, Meghalaya is a state, is one of the progressive northeastern states. Lot of development has happened. There are lots of efforts that the government has been putting in, especially in terms of health, where there has been a significant improvement and a visible improvement in terms of health indicators. Meghalaya was amongst maternal mortality, if we talk, it was the highest in the country at one point of time, amongst the highest, I would say. And if we talk about education, it is still lagging behind. What has been the focus of the state, and how do you think going ahead the government is enabling human development in the state?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you. I wanted to just share the kind of takeaways from our own experience, especially in Meghalaya, and also as Madam was mentioning about Jivika. So again, I would like to start with that. I worked in the erstwhile AP for some time in that self-help group movement, and thereafter, I got the similar kind of responsibility to take the self-help groups to Uttar Pradesh. So I worked from 2007 to 2014 in Uttar Pradesh. So one of the important thing as part of the human development is that if you really invest in women, you can actually see significant changes that we could see. In fact, the villages we worked in Uttar Pradesh, where there used to be huge infant mortality and maternal mortality. The moment you really organize women and build their own institutions and give the kind of the resources that they needed, in fact, they literally they stopped these infant deaths and maternal deaths in those villages where we worked. In fact, as a just to you all know the randomized control trial models. In fact, I have taken Mr. Bill Gates. We have given 2 sets of villages. We said these are the program villages, these are the non-program villages. And when they choose randomly one village, non-program village, one is program village, and where we could see the kind of a difference that one could see. So to starting with that, I would like to say this, and taking these examples of working across the country. So in Meghalaya, we started actually, in fact, along with our Chief Minister, we, as a team, we have been trying to, develop a model which is essentially human development centric economic growth model. So in that, what we have been doing is that we have actually categorized the entire population into the 4 segments. The first segment is that the early childhood period, ECD, early childhood development period, that is 0 to 8 years. So all the programs, all the departments are trying to work on how actually we can unleash the potential of the human capital at a very foundational stage. In fact, there are again randomized control trials are there, like the 50, almost like 50-year longitudinal studies. There, famous study called Perry School Project. So we are doing the large-scale Perry School Project in Meghalaya now. In the sense, what we have been trying to do is that if you give the kind of an attention that is required to the pregnant woman, and also especially how important is pregnancy, because 50% of the brain of a child develops during the pregnancy period. So how you are taking care of that period. So how the health department is working to ensure that there is a better quality ANCs or antenatal care is provided. To how actually we are making sure that there is a proper nutrition is being given to the mothers. Making sure that there are no violence at home at that point of a time. There should not be any altercations. There should be a very, very smooth journey for a mother to give a baby with unlimited potential. So the idea is that. So then the second stage is like adolescent period. Again, there are two windows of opportunity as per the science of early childhood development. One opportunity is that during the early childhood period, where with a very little investment you can actually get maximum results. But you can basically, then the second window of opportunity is the adolescent period. Again, the kind of a neuroplasticity, the kind of a the human beings is so good at that point of a time. So we need to really, we are just putting a lot of emphasis, and we brought some external aided projects to invest in these two populations. One is through ADB, another is from World Bank. We are trying to unleash this potential between 0 to 8 and 9 to 19. This is one. And then here again we are actually bringing a collaborative efforts. Like today, our Anganwadi services are not just provided by the Anganwadi worker. It's also the self-help groups. It's essentially, we are really, in fact, leveraging the existing resources, and everyone is working with one purpose, that how actually we can really build a cognitive capital, the Meghalaya, because we don't have many other resources. We are landlocked state. Only where, only place where actually we can really invest is the human capital. So coming to the later period is that, like what we talk about young adults, where most of our efforts, if you look at the government efforts, are happening at a later stage. So we're trying to see that, like how actually we can invest in this foundational approach, and especially I call it the life cycle approach of human development. So we are calling that life cycle approach, because if you do that one, we can actually create a stronger economy. And this is again so important to make it happen. In fact, the role of the state is so important, because it cannot be a lot of these sectors, what human development sectors, what we are talking about, they have a lot of role has to be played by the states, the public sector. It cannot be like privatized, or it cannot be like, this is something that we believed in this one. In fact, I wanted to say again one more comment, like you all might be aware of, there's a new economist, the Mariana Mazzucato, who talks about mission economy, who wrote a beautiful piece. What they say is that it is the public sector investment that drove the economic growth. It is not the other way. So it's so important that, like, investing in the state's important role of investing in the human development is so important. So actually, because we still talking about like the inclusive economic growth, you invest in the infrastructure and you create wealth and transfer the wealth to the human development. So can we actually articulate, invest, because now it's a time that I think with the kind of a demographic population that what we have, I think we definitely require to invest in different ways. In fact, Meghalaya now stands number 1 among all the states as far as for the budgetary expenditure, percentage of budgetary expenditure on health. So this all happened in the last 3 to 4 years, that's it. So I just wanted to say that to do this one, we require to build a political supportability. We need to work, that's something that we have been closely working. In fact, this is something our Chief Minister has taken up this as a very important agenda during his first tenure, and the second tenure now we are now working on the education reforms. But health is something that we could see significant results in terms of investment, in terms of results also.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, for those insights. I think, yeah, good. Okay, now we come to Ms. Rakhi Bhandari. Punjab has traditionally been the rich agrarian state of the country. there has been, the focus on human development, especially per capita income being the highest for a very long time in the whole country. So talking about, if I talk about Punjab, right now, of course, you are heading tourism, skilling, livelihoods becomes a part of it. But what has been the state's perspective on human development? And we've also very recently seen the education reforms of Punjab that brought Punjab into limelight with all the rankings, indices, giving Punjab the highest ranking in terms of whether it is the PGI, the Performance Grading Index, or the National Achievement Survey. Punjab did extremely well. So there has clearly been some focus on human development, and I've also noticed technology playing a role to an extent, where a focus on e-governance has been laid out. So how do you integrate all of that, and how do you bring out the Punjab story for our audience here today?
So thank you, Arushi. Firstly, I have to admit that I was called as a moderator and I have been
I agree.
converted into a speaker. Well, I'm enjoying this because I get to speak more on my state. And yes, what a state it is, because as I often say, that Punjab is the classic case of the poor little rich boy. So we started so rich, everything was perfect. Once upon a time, the fairy tales, the green revolution, the best parts, the milk revolution, everything happened in Punjab. But unfortunately, I think it is about the tortoise and the hare story, where probably somewhere down the line now, when we look back, we realize that eventually somewhere we kind of failed to keep up with the other states, and we could not really keep up with the tempo. And we probably thought that we were too good and that's it. But of late, gradually now, I think everybody in the state has literally woken up to that, and we've kind of braced up once again. Each of us as individuals, as serving officers in the state, and of course the people alike, as you've seen, the development paradigm has really shaped itself in a big way. And the development paradigm is the one now which is kind of shaping the other policies, be it anywhere in whichever sector in Punjab that is functioning today. So let me first start by explaining that a little about the Punjabi way of life, because that's very important to understand the ethos and the culture of a particular state. Only then can we understand how the way forward literally. So as a community, it's an entrepreneurial community, very, very steadfast, very hardy, and innovative, should I say. Of course, testimony to that is the NRI diaspora, which is abundant in the various countries of the whichever country you land in. I mean, the saying goes that you'll always find an Alu and a Punjabi. So those are two things you'll always find in every country. Having said that, I must say that, well, the current government has, yes, initiated a lot of development initiatives. Primarily, they have kind of got into a mode whereby education and health have taken center stage. Education, of course, all of us know because the rankings have been pretty good, but I think more than the ranking, the emphasis and the focus on the schools of eminence which have come up. So a lot of focus on the schools, teachers are being trained abroad, and for government schools, it's something really new for Punjab, because earlier on, education was, as I just heard in the previous session, somebody was just saying that, we were even only struggling with the hardware literally. So the software comes much later. So we were struggling with basics, like we didn't even have, seats for the children. We didn't have benches. We didn't have, I remember 25, 26 years back when I joined the service and I joined the cadre, I was pretty aghast to kind of even see that, a state like Punjab, a rich state like Punjab, students were still seated on mats and rugs, and those were a basic thing. So as deputy commissioners and as SDMs, it was a challenge to supply those basic things even. But now a considerable amount of improvement has happened in the state, and a lot, as you were saying, Arushi, has come back because of the AI interventions. So a lot of should I say, the interventions have taken over the computer gadgets, the laptops, which have been distributed, the smart interventions, everything that could possibly be put in place, I think has been now put into place. And as I just said, that Punjabis are very quick to learn. So they pick up things very quickly. And everybody in the state has realized now that this is the need of the hour. And I'm glad they have, because everybody has kind of now focused on this aspect. So having said that, also health is a very important segment. And there's a lot of emphasis. You all know about the Mohalla clinics. There's been so much of a noise about the Mohalla clinics. But you know, the good side of it is that it essentially ensures that every individual gets a basic thing like a blood test done or a medicine. Of course, there are many flip-flop sides to each and every story and each and every success story. And we all have a right to talk about the criticisms. But on the positive side of it, I would say that a lot is being done. And individuals actually are happy going to these clinics. They are getting treatments at a very nominal rate. And it is something which can be worked upon. Of course, as everything is work in progress, nothing gets completed unless you attain success. But I feel for a start, this is pretty good. Well, not just health and education, but other sectors and segments which have completely been ignored in Punjab, like tourism, are picking up. And government has very clearly recognized that tourism is one of the happy sectors, so to say. It's like a sunshine sector, which can attract a lot of attention from abroad and from within, from the domestic market as well. And when you get people in, you automatically, try to improve. So infrastructure, we have a robust infrastructure, needless. I mean, so the superb connectivity by rail, road, air. So that is not a problem, that is not a limitation. Agriculture, yes, we are an agrarian economy, so a lot of heavy emphasis on improving the agricultural practices. Of course, again, there is a lot to talk about on that as well. And so importantly, a 360-degree kind of a development perspective, whereby now one is not talking about developing certain sectors, but talking about the roadblocks and kind of trying to get away with these roadblocks one by one. So it's very nice that the realization has dawned that we have firstly woken up to the fact that we had stumbling blocks. So when you know you're rich, you don't even look at the amount of cash you hold. But when you know you're getting poor, so you suddenly start counting all the coins in your basket and all the little notes and whatever was there. So I think Punjab has really woken up to this fact now. And over time, as I have seen it during the course of my service, and that is over the last 26 years now, I see it really coming up and growing in a big way. And the best part is that the people themselves have begun to talk of development. So earlier on, it was mera kaam kar do, and uska kaam kar do. I mean, that psyche has changed, the ethos has changed, and people are not talking about mera school jo hai hamare gaon ka, usko ye acha hona chahiye. So that's a huge change for a society and a community to realize that it's not me alone, but there's a whole ecosystem and built around it, and I think that is a very positive change as I see it.
Sure. Thank you, Rakhi. So, in the next round of questions, and we have spoken all good things about our states, probably it's time to reflect on a few challenges. Right from policy design to policy implementation, and especially when we come to the last mile, the grassroots in particular, there are challenges that are there, and especially human development is full of those challenges. As administrative secretaries, all of you will understand, and you have been facing the challenge of capacity in your respective departments. There has been challenge of motivation in the staff to quite an extent. How do you think these gaps can be bridged, and how the last mile delivery can be ensured in terms of human development? And for the same question, I'm just going to begin with Mr. Kumar and then go to the other two panelists here.
So the challenge of implementation, in fact, what we see, like more we reflect, the problem is that somewhere I think most of the policies are implemented in a very perfunctory way, or I would say there is something, or I would say in a more I see they implement like a more of input driven programs, not like So that's what I see the challenge. So for example, the key thing is that somewhere the sense of purpose, that actually you see missing in the system when you see why some policies are working, why some policies are not working. It's not just the design problem, it's an implementation problem, more of an implementation problem. So of course there is some design problems are there, like basically we need to have a policy design more iterative. We in fact we use in Meghalaya we call it like problem driven iterative adaptation approach. We very seriously we are using even to build a health policy, because we're not sure what works, so we need to be a little bit of a space should be given in terms of design as well as implementation. So what we have seen, definitely there is in fact I'll give an example I think to tell the problems. In fact I'm also Secretary Community and Rural Development Department, and we are having a meeting with agriculture officers and product development officers. We asked them, like, in one of those sessions, a deep reflection sessions, like a manthan, we asked them, like, when you entered the service, what you wanted to do and why you're not able to do what you wanted to do. Simple exercise. We have listed out, like they were telling about various reasons, like, and we identified about 25 reasons. Out of 25, 18 are related to hierarchy. Basically, hierarchy means essentially lack of autonomy, lack of agency. You require some kind of an alignment. Hierarchy is important for maintaining an alignment, but somehow people take a hierarchy differently. So I think we need to break that, or at least a process in such a way that you need to create the spaces for people who are closer to the problem to experiment and find solutions. I think a lot of that entire organizational culture required to be changed. So for that, like, we're doing some experiment, like with that government innovation lab, that what we have been talking about in Meghalaya. But if you ask me, there is a great potential is there because all the states are spending almost like 50% of their budgets on human resources, crowding out the money for other developmental works. So imagine 50% of the money is going on the human resources, their salaries and pensions and everything. Then where are the results? So essentially, we have huge capacity. In fact, we can turn around anything in no time. The only thing is that building that collaborative efforts, that sense of purpose. This is what actually we have been talking about. There is so much potential is there. But yes, that bringing that intrinsic motivation is the key thing.
True. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. I think this needs to be documented for others to be able to know that, these kind of interventions are possible. Coming to Vijaya, I pose you the same question on the last mile delivery, the implementation challenges.
See, I always used to say this whenever, I address my staff, चपरासी से लेके मंत्री तक एक ही मिशन होना चाहिए. The shared vision, shared goals and shared mission. ये नहीं होता है, that is why there is a problem. Only the secretary is, driving it, or along with the secretary, one or two good officers are driving it, but otherwise nobody is bothered. Minister अपने agenda में है, others are in their own agenda, so ऐसा नहीं चलता है. That is not the way. So this is the biggest problem for, for proper implementation of any program, scheme or policy. So organizational goals, how do you align organizational goals along with your staff, and make it as a vision for the entire organization, as a mission for the entire organization. That is very important. The second thing is leadership and drive. How do you actually drive, with what kind of sincerity and what kind of leadership you provide? Taking the team along and then, driving the things. So many officers may or may not have that kind of a drive, and we have अक्सर हमारे सेवा में the predecessor successor syndrome होता है. So predecessor starts, some good intervention, and successor का काम होता है उसको smash कर दो, उसको खत्म कर दो. So it is still going on, very unfortunately. So this is another thing which I have noticed. The third thing is, the stakeholder involvement. Whether the entire, there are so many stakeholders in any program or policy. Whether all the stakeholders are, equally involved in the project or in the program, that is very important. The last mile connectivity or the last mile reach or reaching out to the unreached. When you talk about that, then what kind of awareness has been created, especially when you talk about a program like child marriage. So whether people are aware of all those things which have been given in the Act, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, people may take it very routine in a routine way that it chalta hai, child marriage to hota hi hai. So what kind of awareness you have created, in terms of everything, like getting them involved, talking to them, creating a dialogue, communication strategy and all that, that is very important. And I also feel that an enabling environment altogether, whether that is there to implement a particular program. So these are 4 or 5 things which are very important for reaching to the last mile.
Thank you, Vijaya. Rakhi, what do you think about the policy challenges? It can be design, it can be implementation, and how do you think capacity can play a role in this entire endeavor?
So Arushi, it's very interesting because when I was working in the Government of India, I got a great insight, and I was in the Ministry of Home as Joint Secretary. So I got a great insight into seeing my state from outside. So that view actually provided me the insights into how when I would go into the state, I would kind of, improve on those things. So as I assess it, our first challenge and a very deep challenge which we have not talked about in the state of Punjab is the legacy data. We do not maintain and we do not have the habit of maintaining legacy data. So what happens essentially is that, 20 years prior to when I was I've taken over tourism 5 months back, obviously things would have happened in the tourism department, but none of it is anywhere in the record. So maybe the policy was thought of at a particular point of time, but today when I start, everybody is blank because the people have changed, the processes have changed, and the outsourced employees who were employed then have gone out. So everybody is blank. So I said, how is it possible that this kind of a policy has not been discussed for the last 25 years? So then somebody who's been in the department for 12 years comes back to say, "Ha, ma'am, falane na deal kiya tha, lekin ab wo to retire ho gaya." So gone. So that's a huge amount of colossal wastage, which gives us a handicap, and we don't talk about this. And I think this should be documented somewhere that all the states now need this legacy data. We need to document things somewhere so that we get a greater insight into already what has happened. It's nothing. We don't have to. It's not rocket science. You don't have to start all over again. So luckily for us now, at least all the officers I know of in our current batch of Punjab, all of us at least are focusing now on kind of documenting whatever's happened. And we, as she just mentioned, we are trying to get away with this syndrome so that, when the new officer takes over, we just take over whatever was there. So it's like an inheritance, and then we build on that. And I think that is really significantly contributing now to our growth in our thought process, and as well as in our repertoire of data which we are handling. That is something which I would like to talk about. And that is also again linked to another aspect of our psyche, which is, I will use the colloquial words and you will understand, it's called khata pita laida, baki ahmad shaida. So this was Punjab's approach ki aaj ke liye hame jeena hai. Because Ahmad Shah would come, wo sara divar kar deta tha. He would take the money, the everything away. So everybody said, jo aaj hai, wohi hai. So the habit of saving, the habit of living for tomorrow, the habit for saving up for your generation is just not there. So you see, even if you watch the Punjabi movies or you'll hear the Punjabi songs, you will get it very, very clearly into the system. Incidentally, I'm very fond of music myself. So I listen to a lot of local dialect wherever I go because that gives you an insight into the culture and ethos of a particular state. So you will understand that attitude did, literally prevented people from maintaining legacy data. Ki ye kya hai ye sab? Ye kagaz hai, this is not required. But you don't even realize you're losing out on institutional memory, and there is something which you can just do it, very quickly. Second thing which I talk about is that, we have this attitude, it's called much da sawal. So much da sawal means that I'm to proud to admit that anything can go wrong. So I asked when I joined, I said, tourism, why hasn't it developed in Punjab? And when I joined, they said, you're going to Khudde line department. So Khudde line means a side line, which is not like a main line, you know, you go into industries or you get into this. I said, doesn't matter. So this kind of a thing, why? Because they don't want to talk about themselves. Nobody wants to trumpet the achievements. Nobody wants to talk about what we hold. And now we started talking about ourselves. And I'm talking of tourism because, you know, this is such an important component for human development. The minute you talk about increasing tourism potential, your livelihoods increase, your infrastructure improves, your hospitality industry grows, people around you start getting employed, all your mid-level work, you know, your vocational skills, everything starts, you know, literally rotating and revolving around that force. So it's a very important multiplier, and we should kind of capitalize on that. And the basic problems, as you just asked, are of course the institutional memory, as I said, then the stakeholder consultation, which was never there. So we presumed if I make a policy, I will just announce that, hey, this is the policy and you better stick to it. But why? I mean, you know, there are people. So now we've started talking, we put it on the, so the first time I remember, we have a new wellness tourism policy coming up. I put it on, I said, why don't we just put it, you know, for stakeholder consultation? So everybody gave me a big glare, right? Excuse me, I mean, seriously, you were planning to discuss a policy with people? And it was so beneficial because so many people came and told me, ma'am, isme ye ho sakta hai, we can add this, and you know, this will not be. Ultimately, it has to be a win-win situation for everybody. And it can't be a lose-win or a win-lose, it has to be a win-win. So I think these are the essential handicaps, and I'm talking real basic stuff because this is what we're not talking about in institutional seminars and debates. We talk English, but we don't talk the local dialect. We need to get to talk the local dialect.
Thank you, Rakhi. Thank you so much.
I just want to say this, like Rakhi was mentioning about the legacy data. It's not about you know, not documenting a you know, a thing, but it is all about the attitude. ताज़ा example है, ताज़ा example है, you know, with so much of pain and with so much of effort. And with numerous meetings with DEA and all that, we have drafted a 1,000 crore project for the livelihoods in fisheries and animal husbandry sector, along with IFAD. And in between 2 years, I was not there in the department. I came back and found that it was simply, you know, closed without citing any reason. It just shows a 1,000 crore project. I'm going to revive it again do meetings with DEA and all that. So, it's like that.
So thank you so much, the three of you. I now want to actually open the floor to questions, and please, oh, I can already see raised hands, okay. So we'll begin from here, I think the two of them, and then we'll go this side. I'll come. Here, Amrita.
There are public policy students.
Actually, my question is to Kumar sir. I'm from Kerala, and it is considered a developed state. In reality, there's a long way to go, but I'm not here to discuss that. So, as Arshri ma'am said in the beginning when you introduced him, that Meghalaya is one of the most progressive states in the northeastern region. So historically, like we have studied in our history textbooks that Kerala and Meghalaya are matrilineal societies. So in reality, in Kerala, even though it is matrilineal, I don't think it's matriarchal. There is very much toxic patriarchy present. So I want to know what is the reality in Meghalaya. And I want to know if being a matrilineal society or a state has helped in any way to achieve human development.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful question actually. Yes. This is, in fact, me and my chief minister, both of us will tell every forum that we have this paradox. Yeah. We are a matrilineal society, but we have highest maternal mortality rates. So one of the reasons, like this is a very, what you already said, it's a matrilineal society. What happened, like there was a work division. typical gender roles. Okay, you have the property, is like, you know, you're getting the property, but the women have taken a role, and in fact I would say more than the expected role. Entire raising children, taking care of the family, it's their responsibility. In fact, one of the reasons, like after a series of this analysis, we found the main reason for maternal mortality rate is lack of birth spacing. Today in Meghalaya, the average family size is about 7.
Oh my God.
7. So there is, in fact, if you see a very young woman, 30-year-old, she says that I have a sick children. And you know, this is the kind of a thing. Recently, I went for a maternal death review. You know, the lady died while giving a birth to the 11th child.
No, but is there a premium on, I
There-
mean, why?
there are- I'm
Why
just-
more
there
children?
are- so the reason is that this is what the role, like matrilineal society, it's an indigenous population also. They feel that, like, you know, having children is a blessing. It's not that easily you can actually remove that kind of a thing, and it's our responsibility, you know, also to give, you know, so matrilineal society, but they take care of the children. In fact, we have the one of the highest percentage of single mothers because they take full responsibility. So so those are the issues. Like, that's where, while looking at it, how to actually put them into the public space. Like in Kerala, you know, how many women are actually in the public spaces, like in terms of the leaders, you know, except of course you're very, don't want you to go for it, but like definitely very few women leaders in terms of the politics, right? Public affairs. So public policy. So in the public policy domain, to bring the public affairs, what we have done is that recently in the we have one community institution, village employment councils, which are very important bodies. There we brought women's reservation, where in alternate elections only women can contest. That means 100% reservation for women. But like men can only contest only in alternate elections. So basically we are trying to bring them in the public space, and also we also using this self-help group are really coming up well. They are providing a very good platforms for conversations and having these discussions. But you're right, I don't want to take much time, but you're right, there is a challenge is there. But Kerala, I admire Kerala because you have got like single digit IMR and MMR.
But there is a lot of GBV, gender-based violence, a lot of very hardcore patriarchy. But in contrast, in contrast, actually what we found in Bihar is that, you know, girls who are educated up to class 12, their fertility rate is far, far better than the national average. So their fertility rate has really come down. So that's, but in contrast, I don't know why in Meghalaya the education,
it's more of a cultural reason.
Yeah, but they are English educated, no? Their medium of education is also
there,
English,
but
and
it's more
a lot of missionary
it's
schools.
More of an urban phenomena. Rural areas are still having a lot of challenges. We have a lot of rural areas, and that's why we are also now working with faith institutions. We are going to them, talking to them about these concepts of birth spacing, why it is important for. So some of these things we have to work differently there. Traditional institutions.
True. And now there's the Punjab perspective which comes up, which is complete patriarchy. So, but well, we've changed the dynamics of it all, and I think yes, now I see it as a very different society, and especially after the constitutional amendment, whereby women sarpanches, etc., are compulsory. We have started as administrators now asking the question that, you know, why are you coming when the man comes? And I just love the way even now they just walk in so unabashedly and says, "Nahi, wo ghar ka kaam kar rahi hai," you know. So then all of us ask literally that, why are you here then, you know? Why don't you go help out and let her come here? So I think that space is opening up, that conversation is opening up. It's important to talk about it because now people are realizing that women sadly are everywhere and they've occupied all the spaces, so there's very little to spare, and things are changing gradually in Punjab. That's a very, very positive.
But talking about human development, this Balika Cycle Yojana, scholarships and uniforms, and also incentives, you know, after graduation, if they want to go for higher, after intermediate, if they want to go for higher education. There are incentives like 20,000 rupees they get as an incentive, a motorcycle, etc., etc. So all these things have actually led to you know, girls studying up to class 12 which has actually automatically had a positive impact on reducing the fertility rate in Bihar. That is a very promising, thing to happen.
Thank you so much for all the perspectives. I think we go to the next question. Yeah.
I'm just adding to the Raki ma'am thing. I'm very much agreeing with her statement when she said that the tourism has, in a way, completely changed the lives of people. Because I would believe that you could approach a poverty alleviation in a very multi-dimensional way. One way, in absolute terms, you could always provide their health, very tangible things, education. And the other way is the intangible terms, like you could give them a respectful life, like you could make this, add up to the aesthetics of city, like you could build a park, parks, libraries, so that they could live very, respectable way of life, so that, for example, let's say, when you want to give some ration to the people, you have to make them stand in the line. In a way, we are actually robbing their agency, like you're actually displaying them to the world that they're actually poor. So, but as she said, when you actually also focused upon the tourism, we could add the city in a much more better way so that they could lead a respectful life. And that is a very good way to alleviate the poverty in a very different way.
Right. Thank you.
So you're so right. What we started doing, for instance, just in tourism, we started talking about, we developed this theme. Our chief minister, so he also recognized the fact that women in tourism. So we suddenly started talking about women in tourism and women, how to get in, rope in more women for the touristy spots, and whether they could be given the B&B homestays, etc. If they could run the hotels, and we've started encouraging the men folk to ask the women to own the hotels and get them registered in their names. So it's a great sense of achievement when a woman, even though she's sitting at home, she realizes I am a director, and she then starts actually asserting herself. It's very interesting. So it
even
changes
in
the
Himachal
dynamic.
recently, I just saw, on your ration card, you have a name of the head of the family. Now that ration card name is the woman's name. It's not the male member's name. At least at the head of the family, written and documented in an official government document. I think these are small empowerment measures, but really,
But they go a long way.
Important.
I think
We go to the
she's
next
waiting
question.
like long
Okay.
time.
Someone? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yeah.
And even using she often can do better. Like you are telling that we have added women for ration cards. Even using she often makes difference. Okay, I want to add for the statements made by Vijay Lakshmi ma'am. So there was an NGO, I can't recall the NGO's name, in Bid, district of Maharashtra. They have used WhatsApp very efficiently. Bid district is the hotspot for child marriages, right? They have kept all these men or women who can give information to that person, so that they can directly within no time they can approach, they can go to that spot and stop those child marriages. This is I guess this is very efficient way to stop child marriages. I don't know if any other state is actually following it through government. I'm not sure.
Recently, in fact, we are coming from a Chief Secretary's conference, in fact, attended by her Honorable Prime Minister. So there is one collector, Karnool. She gave a fantastic presentation about how actually they are arresting child marriages. Very interesting.
Karnool or Karur?
Karnool.
Karnool.
Yeah, using through WhatsApp. At the same time, adding upon it, we can stop this domestic violence. Many women lack confidence. It's not because of their men or something, but they don't know the path. I worked with an NGO. I was part of this NGO where we go to them and tell the process they can have, to whom they should approach. It's not like we're making them to go. We are taking them to police police stations. It's like we are just making their way easy, by storytelling. We are humans are very we can motivate, we can get motivated a lot by stories. So we started storytelling and through real life stories, and this way many women actually came out, and they themselves went to police stations and they filed all these cases. So in through grassroots level we have there is a huge information gap. It's not because of their men, but it's because they don't know the process.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for your insights. I think, just a second. We'll take 1, 2, and 3 questions together and then answers towards the end. We are almost on time. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So basically, I want to understand this thing. Like, there is this change of bureaucratic post. Somebody comes in, but the change in dispensation of government is something the political party which comes with a manifesto and a different ideological backing. So something that you have built for last 5 years is completely demolished by somebody which comes in with a different manifesto or ideological backing. For example, in Punjab, there has been different government. I don't want to talk openly about it, but please give us a fair bit of idea. How does it make you feel? Like, does it make, do you feel like it's a policy paralysis, helplessness, suffocation? I just really want to understand this thing, because ultimately bureaucrats are handcuffed.
Who's the question?
I just want to understand.
I wonder. Okay. So we take the 3 questions and then we take the 3 answers. Yeah.
Good evening, all. This is Soumya from Odisha. I want to ask the question is, what are the steps taken and action taken towards the empowering transgenders in respective states, and what are the challenges faced? As I want to just mention, in state like Odisha, there is a scheme like Sikruti to empower transgender. I just want to know about the action taken for empowering transgender in education, health, nutrition, and especially livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. I think we go to the last question and then take the answers.
I'm referring to the comments made by Mr. Kumar about the hierarchical work culture and an organizational culture that does not motivate, that's demotivating. And that's kind of across the public systems and across the states. So my question is that what is it that perpetuates that culture and what can be done to stop it? Because that's so fundamental to any improvement in public systems is the people who are there. Right? How do you keep them motivated? How do you transform that work culture? First, why is it still perpetuated, and what can be done to?
Okay. So 3 things: the political change, the issue of the transgenders in the policy, and the hierarchy. I think.
Do you want us to take one of each?
Whatever. You want to play safe, I'm sure.
No, I'll answer his question. No tight spot. I'll answer straight.
Please.
So as I see it, personally, whatever schemes, as you just mentioned, yes, things keep changing and the governments come and the political executive decides that these are going to be our priorities, etc., etc. So, but at the same time, I think the onus, because that would answer partially your question also, that in some way the hierarchy also helps. Because there's a way when things are going from the bottom to the top, there is a certain kind of refinement which occurs, there's a certain kind of addition which occurs, there's a certain kind of deletion, there's a certain kind of modification. So I think it's a very welcome step because, well, you can have some major schemes change, but everything doesn't change. And that's for the people like us sitting in the system and for the stakeholders to demand that those basic good things don't change. So if you have tasted the fruit of happiness in a particular government, you will not let go as a stakeholder and you will insist that we also continue with that. So it's only big things, big reforms. So I mean, it's only the alliance between the Indo and the US relationship, maybe that would change. And other schemes and some positive things would come up and things would happen in a different format. But it's for us as people, as the people as the stakeholders, for people who are also into the policy making segment, that each one of us needs to sit back and refine those things and not get carried away by that governments may change and that's okay. But people are the same. Essentially, society is comprised of the same individuals. So that the thought process you don't have to change it much. If the Punjabi psyche is of a particular nature, if I don't know, you belong to Kashmir? Yeah, I can see that. So how do I know you're from Kashmir? Because you just look it. So yeah, so if you don't need to change a few things, I mean that's it. You build on those things and all the challenges and all the the problems which you face. I think you should build positively. There's no point crying over the fact that abhi sarkar badal gayi, sab kuch badal gaya. That's a bit of a humdrum and I think a bit of nonsense. Doesn't hold good. If there are positive people thinking of positive changes in society, nobody can stop you. I'm pretty sure on that.
A straight answer for your question is, see, politicians are very smart. Okay, they're smarter than us. That is why they are there in those positions. So if a scheme is working well, they won't change it. Just look at Manirega. It is happening. You know, it was started in Congress regime and it's still going on. Just look at ICDS. It's going on since donkey's ages. You know, since 75, it's going on continuously. NRLM was also started. Right to Education Act was started during Congress regime. It's still going on.
It only changes names.
The names, the packaging changes sometimes.
Manirega is still Manirega only.
Yeah.
So there are so many RKVY, NFSM, all the schemes are still continuing. So they won't change the most popular schemes, but they may add, like PM Kisan has been added. So they may add many other schemes to gain popularity and all that. So that's fine. So they won't change. They won't. The main programs which are very popular, hugely popular, they haven't changed. But coming to Bihar, the same dispensation is there since last 18 years. So there's no change.
Okay. Your take on the other two?
Other two questions. So regarding transgender, there is an act. I think you are all aware. There is an act, and all the states have been asked to make sure that there is a committee at the state level to see that there is no stigma in anywhere. So there's a lot of regulatory framework is coming up, like a very social safety nets are being created. That's a good sign. Basically, people are able to see that at least all stakeholders, government is serious about it, and the Department of Social Welfare has been entrusted with this responsibility. So coming to your question, regarding the hierarchy, because it takes time. It takes time because it's again a culture. Like just now we were talking about the patriarchy. It's a structural issues. So we are all coming from those structures. So it takes a little time to change that. And so coming back to the government system, like it's again seen as something that if you see the kind of an amount of interest to enter into the government space, why? It's again the power structures and so it takes time, but the best way to disrupt these things in a positive way, because hierarchy is important to maintain an order. There should be an alignment, it's very important, but at the same time, how actually the hierarchy can be used positively to create a holding environment, saying that okay, I am giving you the space, you experiment, and deliver results, and see that purpose is being achieved. So a kind of we need to invest in that one. So currently, I think not much work is happening on that. I've been working closely with Capacity Building Commission. In fact, Meghalaya is one of the 2 states where they are trying to look at what we are trying to do differently. So one is that how you're mobilizing the teams, how actually we are creating the decentralized catalytic leadership, how actually the frontline functionaries are motivated, how actually they are seeing the value in what they are doing, so how they are, so a lot of thing is required. So for that, one of the things that we also looking at is there is a lot of the citizen state relationships have to be improved a lot. So we also brought a social audit act where it's mandatory at least once a year. There is a citizens will ask questions and and the government functionaries have to answer. In fact, it's making them more accountable. So you need to create some of those systems to make the citizen-state relationship more, in fact, I would say more participative, and also it's like a partnership model than giver and receiver kind of a model. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just very short. Transgender thing. So I was talking to a transgender lady who was sitting next to me in Bangladesh. I asked her, what is this one thing that you would ask if you come across in a AS? I reiterated 3 times. She said only one thing, that you just should be allowed to live on the road. That is the only thing that she said.
True.
Another thing, you said that there's 50% reservation for women in local
Panchayati Raj bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to know if there is any reservations for transgenders or other genders.
No, not yet. Not yet.
So what we can do, guys, is I know last session of the day, I am so impressed with the commitment that people have. We've started, at 11 o'clock. We are at 7:10 right now, and we are still engaging with questions. Are really impressive. I think a big round of applause for all of you for being so inquisitive. What we can do is take this conversation outside now. We have a Qawwali night planned for you, a gala dinner, a networking dinner, and all our panelists, everyone is going to be there. So I think we can take the conversations outside. Thank you so much to all our panelists for being here. And Rakhi, it was a very good decision to not have you as a moderator and a speaker, because we got the Punjab perspective, which is very important. So thank you, everyone.
A huge thank you to all the panelists for their enriching discussions, and I think we all gained quite a bit from it. Hearing about your first-hand experiences provided us with profound insights into the diverse perspectives on human development within each state, which are as diverse as chalk and cheese. The complexities you navigated, the opportunities you seized, and the lesson you learned have undoubtedly enriched our collective understanding of the state you have served or are serving in. I would now request Dr. Arushi Jain to please felicitate our panelists with a token of appreciation. Can I have the mementos, please? Oh, they're here. Okay, that's it. Ms. Rakhi Bhandari, please. Dr. N. Vijayalakshmi. Mr. Sampath Kumar, please. But the photo you could come, yes. And I would also like for a group picture, please. Group photo, please. Thank you so much, everyone. And now we will see you at 7:30 at the Recreation Center lawns for the Qawwali and followed by dinner. Thank you, everyone.